This particular strike should have been an impossibility. Yet, the United States has just accomplished something with its HIMARS launchers that these weapon systems were conventionally not designed to do, and the Iranian Navy has unequivocally borne the full brunt of this historically significant action. This is more than just a military operation, it's a profound signal. It's a message delivered directly to Iran, certainly, but also unmistakably to the rest of the world. The US military now possesses a capability that no other fighting force has demonstrated before. What we have just witnessed is the US reportedly sinking Iranian ships using ballistic missiles fired from a launcher typically designated only for striking stationary land targets. This groundbreaking development could fundamentally redefine how the U.S. approaches naval warfare from this point forward. The publication Times the War Zone Times TWZ first brought these details to light, reporting on March 10 that the US has been employing its high-mobility artillery rocket systems, specifically with long-range ATACMS missiles, against Iranian forces. While the use of HIMARS in a land-based conflict isn't inherently newsworthy, it's a natural choice against Iran, given the regime's numerous stationary land targets, and ATACMS is well suited for such targets. We must underscore that a historic first is indeed involved here. That unprecedented achievement can be attributed entirely to a different class of missile that HIMARS is now apparently launching at Iran, the Precision Strike Missile, or PSM. This brand new, cutting-edge missile has reportedly made its official combat debut against Iran, immediately raising crucial questions about whether the US has rapidly developed and deployed an anti-ship variant. The why behind this query is a pivotal point we will explore in detail as we delve deeper into America's historic strike. First, however, a closer look at the PSM itself is necessary to understand why it might be the missile that has empowered the USS to achieve what was once considered impossible. Developed by Lockheed Martin, the PSM is touted by the company as the next generation in our family of precision strike, surface-to-surface weapon systems. This designation immediately suggests it's a short-range ballistic missile, ostensibly not intended for use against naval assets. Launched two-per-pod from HIMARS, the PSM boasts a flexible range between 60 and 499 kilometers, or 37.2 and 310 miles, and delivers an insensitive munition, energetic payload. The insensitive aspect is noteworthy because IM payloads are meticulously designed for safety, created to ensure that no external stimuli beyond the missile's own internal mechanisms can trigger the payload to explode. That's the core concept, at least. Iran, unfortunately, has quickly discovered that an IM energetic payload, when it functions as intended, is more than capable of sinking ships. According to Times the Defense Post *, the PRSM fundamentally equips the US with the unparalleled ability to swiftly engage time-sensitive targets using mobile ground launchers, such as the HIMARS systems already deployed in the field. Given the US' extensive network of bases surrounding Iran, it's almost a certainty that HIMARS systems are positioned at these strategic locations. Thus, the primary logistical challenge for the US merely involved transporting its 816-kilogram, nearly 1,800-pound missiles to their required launch points, effectively transforming Iran into a potential target for this potent new ballistic missile. Abundant evidence suggests that the US has been actively launching missiles from its HIMARS systems, and specifically that it's been firing PSMs. US Central Command CENTCOM even provided some of this evidence directly, sharing a video on X, formerly Twitter, showcasing multiple PSM launches from an undisclosed location. In a historic first long-range precision strike missiles, PSMs were used in combat during Operation Epic Fury. Providing an unrivaled deep strike capability, CENTCOM proudly proclaimed, though it refrained from offering much additional information beyond the visuals of the launches. Further corroboration came from another X account, Egypt's Intel Observer, which posted a video depicting a PSM launch from a site in Bahrain. This strongly indicates at least one confirmed location from which the US has been deploying this missile. Conveniently, Bahrain lies well within striking distance of the Iranian mainland. Perhaps more significantly, Any missiles launched from the US base in that country would necessarily have to traverse the Persian Gulf to reach Iran. However, recent developments suggest that such a mainland crossing might not have occurred at all. Instead of targeting the Iranian landmass with its novel ballistic missile, the US reportedly struck a ship. This is the truly impossible feat associated with the world-first combat deployment of the PRI-SM, and TWZ has provided invaluable clarification on what transpired. The outlet actively sought to clarify comments made by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the US Air Force, Dan Kane. Kane had previously stated that the initial 10 days of Operation Epic Fury had seen the US sink 50 Iranian ships using a combination of artillery, fighters, bombers, and sea-launched missiles. It was the specific mention of artillery that immediately raised eyebrows. When TWZ pressed for an explanation, the publication received confirmation from an unnamed US official, who unequivocally stated that artillery in this context referred to the deployment of HIMARS against Iranian Navy vessels. This revelation challenges conventional understanding. Such an action simply shouldn't be possible. This is emphatically not what HIMARS is designed for, or at least, not what ATACMS missiles fired from HIMARS are engineered to achieve, as TWZ meticulously explains. It should also be noted that there is no known operational variant of ATAPS capable of engaging moving targets, meaning that it would have to be used against stationary ships, the outlet clarified. While the possibility of the US successfully striking a stationary vessel using ATACMS certainly exists, the comparatively limited range of ATACMS versus PRI-SM would make such an endeavor challenging. Moreover, HIMARS itself is not particularly adept at hitting moving targets, a lesson we've absorbed from observing its deployment in the Ukraine war. Dr. Marina Miron, a respected war expert at King's College London, articulated this point when speaking to the BBC in 2022 about Ukraine's use of HIMARS launchers. HIMARS is very accurate when it is used against fixed targets, when you have the exact coordinates, Miron noted, before adding, but it is not so effective against moving targets such as troops, so it cannot push back and advance. And yet, despite these known limitations, Kane himself explicitly stated that artillery was employed against Iran's ships, and the official who engaged with TWZ has definitively confirmed that this artillery was indeed HIMARS. The evidence is now rapidly accumulating, suggesting that the US has achieved something truly unprecedented: a ballistic missile kill against a warship. The next, seemingly simple question we must ask is how. There is a fascinating twist to the PRI-SM narrative that may provide the answer. But first, let's momentarily apply Occam's razor and consider the simplest explanation as the most likely. In this scenario, the straightforward rationale for America's ballistic missile kill would be that it utilized HIMARS, most probably equipped with the standard version of the PRI-SM, to strike a stationary vessel while it was harbored in port. The U has certainly adopted this tactical approach before. On March 2, TWZ reported that the U had targeted one of Iran's significant naval bases situated on the Strait of Hormuz, igniting it and neutralizing at least one Iranian frigate. Just a few days prior, the same publication detailed another US strike against a docked Iranian Alvand-class frigate, which satellite imagery showed ablaze in Konarak, located in Iran's southeast on the Gulf of Oman. However, it's crucial to note that there was no definitive confirmation regarding the specific weapon system that struck these vessels. It remains entirely plausible that they were hit by USA air power, rather than the artillery that Kane referenced. The fundamental challenge here boils down to range. Since Bahrain represents the sole location from which we have confirmed sightings of HIMARS and PRI-SM launchers, we can use it as our primary example. The shortest maritime distance between Bahrain and Iran across the Persian Gulf is approximately 120 miles. As TWZ elaborates, both ATACMS and PRI-SM are capable of covering this distance, but only a relatively small segment of the Iranian coastline would fall within their operational ranges. When it comes to striking ships specifically in port, the US options are geographically constrained. While the Bandar, Kangan, and Asaluya ports would be within range, not many other major naval facilities would be. Nevertheless, if Iran has indeed been stationing warships at these specific ports, it is highly conceivable that the U.S. has successfully engaged these vessels using its ballistic missiles, effectively removing them from the operational equation. This remains the most straightforward explanation for the world-first accomplishment the US has just achieved. But what if there's an even more audacious explanation? What if the US has managed to score a kill against a times-moving Times-Iranian warship using HIMARS and a pre-RSM ballistic missile? As incredible as it sounds, there is a very strong possibility that this is precisely what has occurred, and we are about to delve into the compelling reasons why. Before we dig deeper into that, you're currently tuned into The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect opportunity to hit that button so you never miss a single one of our informative videos. So, we transition now from the merely probable to the seemingly impossible. How could the US possibly strike a moving ship using one of its ballistic missiles? This is a feat that is exceptionally difficult to execute even under optimal conditions. Even utilizing a standard pre-SM, the U.S. would face immense challenges in hitting a fast-moving vessel. The key lies in the inherent nature of ballistic missiles. As incredibly fast as they are, these missiles still require considerable flight time, often traveling hundreds of miles to reach their targets. Instantaneous strikes are simply not feasible, which makes a rapidly moving target like a ship an extraordinarily difficult prospect. Compound that challenge by placing the target within the seemingly boundless expanse of an ocean or sea, and you encounter even more significant obstacles. Precisely locating a ship at the moment of launch, and then accurately predicting its exact position by the time a missile arrives, represents an immense challenge that standard ballistic missiles are not inherently designed to handle. At least, not the missiles typically fired from HIMARS launchers. However, the US may not have deployed a Times-standard Times missile at all. The particular version of the pre-SM used to strike one of Iran's warships may, in fact, have been a specialized anti-ship variant that the US has reportedly been developing for quite some time. Evidence supporting this development surfaced in 2024. In June of that year, Naval News Times reported that the U.S. Army had successfully completed its first ever anti-ship ballistic missile sinking exercise, and it was the pre-SM that achieved this milestone. During this exercise, the U.S. deployed one of its autonomous multi-domain launchers and a pair of pre-SM missiles to strike a decommissioned and times-moving Times ship as part of a comprehensive training exercise known as Valiant Shield. This exercise marked the first operational use of both these systems away from American soil, a significant achievement in itself. However, it was the fact that pre-SM scored a direct hit on a moving target that stands as the most crucial milestone. Previously, a SYNKEX involving a ballistic missile had never been successfully completed. Now, it had been. This groundbreaking success implies that the pre-SM now offers a potent weapon that the U.S. could deploy to achieve similar feats. Almost 2 years later, in the strategic waters surrounding Iran, TWZ further corroborates this by citing evidence that the US has been actively developing a version of PRSM featuring an additional seeker known as Increment 2. Whispers of this development were circulating as early as January 2024, 6 months prior to the successful Pri-SM SYNKEX. TWZ had reported in 2023 that the US had already celebrated the conclusion of the project that enabled the creation of Pri-SM Increment 2 and was in the process of transitioning this successful research project into the operational implementation of this nascent technology. Thus, the summer 2024 use of a Pri-SM to sink a ship could very well have been the first practical demonstration of Increment 2 technology bearing fruit. In essence, the US is indeed employing Pri-SM in Iran, but perhaps not in the way we initially assumed. However, there remain a considerable number of unknowns in this complex equation. As TWZ acknowledges, it is possible that the Army has begun to field Increment 2 PRSMs, at least on a limited level, as well. The Army announced that it had begun initial flight testing of the new Seeker system in 2023. Whether or not Increment 1 missiles can be readily converted into Increment 2 versions is also unknown, the outlet states, further noting that it's still entirely possible the US fired the Increment 1 version of Pre-SM at a stationary ship. Nevertheless, one crucial fact remains undisputed. The US has achieved at least one confirmed kill against an Iranian ship using HIMARS, and that kill was almost certainly carried out using a ballistic missile. Whether the targeted ship was moving or stationary is almost immaterial in the grand scheme, as this still represents a world-first strike for the US, unequivocally demonstrating to Iran that America possesses far more options for neutralizing its warships than anyone previously thought possible. And that brings us to the profound reasons why this strike holds such significance. Beyond the US, achieving an unprecedented feat, a topic we will explore in greater detail. The immediate implication of this strike is that it brings the US another step closer to effectively neutralizing Iran's navy. This objective is a key strategic goal for the early stages of Operation Epic Fury, not primarily because Iran's navy poses a direct existential threat to superior US naval power in the Persian Gulf region, but rather due to Iran's unique geopolitical leverage, its effective control over the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow, vital waterway is located south of Iran, and, astonishingly, approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil and gas transits through it annually. In crude oil alone, that volume equates to a staggering 20 million barrels daily, as The Guardian Times reports, further emphasizing that the Strait of Hormuz also serves as the single most critical trade route for specialized superchilled tankers transporting liquefied natural gas. Compounding its criticality, this particular strait cannot be easily bypassed, unlike other major maritime arteries, such as the Strait of Malacca, rendering it a strategic choke point for an enormous proportion of the world's oil and gas supply. This geographic reality is precisely where Iran derives its significant leverage. However, that crucial leverage can only be maintained if Iran possesses a functional navy, which is precisely what the US is currently endeavoring to diminish. Kane has asserted that the US has already destroyed approximately 50 Iranian naval vessels. A count that includes the ship the US is believed to have hit with its ballistic missiles. Nevertheless, as the New York Times highlights, an additional layer of complexity arises from the fact that Iran's regime technically maintains two distinct navies. The Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, IRIN, closely mirrors the conventional naval forces of other nations operating traditional warships, the outlet explains. However, there is a second parallel naval force, operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, which primarily utilizes smaller, faster boats. These vessels are tasked with patrolling critical waterways like the Strait of Hormuz and can be deployed by Iran to conduct swift, disruptive attacks designed to discourage commercial traffic from utilizing the strait. This dual naval threat is precisely what the US is striving to counter right now. Each successful strike against an Iranian vessel, irrespective of which of the two navies it belongs to, represents a significant victory in the broader objective of maintaining the unimpeded flow of oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz. Currently, open transit through the strait has not yet been fully restored. Experts, such as David Roche from Quantum Strategy, anticipate that the strait will likely reopen completely sometime towards the end of March. Yet, with each successive strike against an Iranian ship, that projected deadline appears progressively more feasible. The US has also actively targeted Iranian vessels attempting to lay mines in the strait, reportedly resulting in the destruction of 16 such ships. While minesweepers would be required if those vessels had successfully deployed their ordnance, what we are witnessing is an intense tug-of-war over the Strait of Hormuz. The revelation that the US can now effectively strike ships using ballistic missiles introduces yet another formidable problem for Iran. In a naval conflict, it is demonstrably losing. Let's now revisit the wider strategic importance of the US employing a ballistic missile to neutralize a ship. As TWZ pertinently observes, the US military has been in a sustained effort to catch up in the burgeoning anti-ship ballistic missile ASBM race. China, for instance, has made colossal investments in this domain, leading to the development of sophisticated weapons like the KD-21, an air-launched ballistic missile theoretically capable of striking ships. However, theoretically remains the operative word here. China has not engaged in a major conventional war for decades, and the modernized iteration of its military remains largely untested in actual combat scenarios. What the U.S. has just achieved with its anti-ship ballistic missile strike is to entirely eliminate theory and conjecture. America has unequivocally proven that it possesses a version of the PrISM capable of hitting ships. Whether the target was docked or at sea, the simple, undeniable fact that this has occurred in a real combat situation has propelled the US from merely attempting to catch up to becoming the undeniable world leader in this critical arena solely by virtue of being the only nation to have successfully executed this type of strike in live combat. This achievement serves as a potent signal. It is directed not merely at Iran, but, as TWZ elucidates, at any other nation that might conceivably find itself embroiled in a future conflict with the US. PrISM is often discussed as a particularly important new capability in the context of any future high-end fight against China in the Pacific, precisely because of its extended range compared to ATACMS, the outlet states, adding that extra reach would be valuable for engaging targets on land and at sea. All of this collectively signifies that PrISM is not only operationally active, but it has now undergone its inaugural true combat tests, passing them all with exceptional success. It is almost certain that the US has been launching these advanced ballistic missiles at land targets on the Iranian mainland. But if TWZ's interpretation is accurate regarding Kane's meaning when he referred to the US neutralizing Iranian naval assets using artillery, then the PrISM represents an even greater, proven threat to formidable adversaries like China and Russia. The US can now undeniably take out ships with ballistic missiles, endowing America with a capability that could prove immensely important not just in the current conflict with Iran, but in any future global confrontation. China, in particular, should be acutely concerned by this formidable new capability, especially when considering the immense investments the country has made in constructing its own aircraft carriers. The Fujian-class carrier, for instance, is intended to symbolize significant progress and modern naval power projection. However, the stark reality is that such a state-of-the-art vessel could potentially be neutralized by a US warship built as far back as the 1970s, never mind the advanced ballistic missiles that the US is now demonstrably capable of launching against it. Be sure to check out our dedicated video if you wish to delve deeper into this critical topic. And if you found this video informative and engaging, please make sure to subscribe to The Military Show so you don't miss any of our ongoing comprehensive coverage of the evolving situation in the Iran conflict.